Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in a minute. So if you want to grab your chai, we have hot chai with ginger. And the pizzas are all vegetarian. And one of the salad has meat in it, just FYI. And we have water and, of course, chai for your lunch this afternoon. Again, thank you so much for joining us. This is our Chai and Just Chat session. And thank you again, Karen, for allowing us to host this here and being a panelist as well, number one. And number two, we have the Chai and Just Chat sessions are every month. On different topics. We started probably in 2017, and in August we celebrated the second year anniversary, and the topics usually are to bridge community and cultures together, and the hot topics of the community or issues during those time. Some of these topics are taboo topics that people are not able to address, but we make it a very informal session, something that needs to be addressed, and we discuss it along with the communities. So today's topic, as you can see, is startups are a global opportunity, and I just visited India, and I just saw the tons of opportunities and the missed opportunities that was happening, and I said this would be a perfect topic for today, and of course I gathered the expertise to join us this afternoon. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go deep into the introduction because you have the profiles of the panelists running behind on the screen. But from my right, to my right, we have Kent Davis, who is the CEO and the president of Johns Creek Chamber of Commerce. So Kent, thank you so much, and thank you for bringing your humor anywhere and everywhere along. So thank you. And we have Don Lloyd Williams, whom I was introduced very recently, and I felt he would be a perfect fit for the opportunities that's available globally for the discussion today. And Karen Cashin is, of course, the CEO of this Tech Alpharetta, and this is the building for Tech Alpharetta. So Anil was mentioning he's never been here, so he's happy he's here Welcome. Today. And so Karen runs this place, and she also hosts the many startups, companies and businesses that are here. And to my immediate left, we have Henry Yu, whom I met recently, but a wealth of knowledge, wears several hats and has worn several hats in the past, and would be able to tell us more about just the wonderful opportunities that exist globally. And James McCoy was introduced to me by Commissioner Mills a month ago. So thank you again for taking the time to be here with us. And you are the CEO and president of the coming Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce. And so the pattern today, the agenda for today is I'll be moderating the session, and I have some questions that I'll ask you. Of course, there will be some general questions as well. And before we start the session, I just want to let you know that we've been going green in the Chai and Just Chat sessions. So this green bottle has gone to India in all the sessions and has come back. So I've saved almost like probably 40 plastic bottles in India for just taking my own water that I go every time. So I want Tech Alpharetta and the leaders here to consider going green and prevent plastic pollution. So that's my humble appeal. But James, my question to you is, what is your greatest fear, and how do you manage fear in general? And you can look at the audience.
Of course, historically, it's always people's greatest fear is public speaking, which is ironic. But so sort of on a kind of a more immediate level, I think the saber rattling, around the economy. We have so much along the 400 corridor that is going for us I'm sorry. Maybe it is probably user error. That's it's very likely. So along the 400 corridor, there's so much going for us that I do. We're talking ourselves into an economic problem. And rather than it being anything real, when I look out, you look at least locally at what's going on, our labor market trends and the overall economy. But truly, I think I do think about that an awful lot. We're preparing, for that, and I see a lot of particularly local governments preparing for that. And when that happens, I think you often, when you're preparing for something like that, you almost make it real, and that's a tricky place to both be prepared and also keep that from happening. But,
good. So that you are trying to manage the fear in the solution by being prepared.
Yes, I mean that's the other side of it. It's that's sort of the economic quandary. Of course, is both being prepared without communicating that the very thing that you're fearing is coming, and so but it seems like from everything that we're seeing, at least on a local level, while there have been some signs of slowdown, it is certainly not to the magnitude of anything we've seen in the more recent past. So.
Okay, sounds good. Henry, what does life mean to you?
What does life mean to me? Excellent. I guess I've done a lot of volunteer services the past 20 years, and certainly having the opportunity to travel globally. I think in life I find happiness in terms of being able to share my failures and success with young people. Certainly, because I've done a lot of mentorship, and being a foreign student, I came to this country with no English or limited, went to school up north, and then I benefited from a great education. So I guess my life right now is I devote a lot of time sharing my failures and successes with young entrepreneurs, and it could be American citizens, could be Chinese, Indian, Asian, and actually we have done it so successfully the past 10 years that actually Coca-Cola gave us, the organization I belong that I founded in terms of mentorship, Coca-Cola gave us at least, I think, $20,000 a year for the past few years. Oh, nice. And that reflects not just Henry Yu. I think I bring the best to the table in terms of getting the right resources, right team, which is so critical for entrepreneurs. Having the right team will be so much easier in terms of your next step.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Henry, for that wisdom. Kirk, do you want to probably move to that chair so you can, I want to see you as well. So, Karen, who is someone you admire or respect and why?
I think about that.
And you want to keep the mic?
Yeah. I would have to say that I have a great deal of admiration for people that serve in the teaching profession as a whole. Having two kids and taking them through the public school systems out here, I think it just takes a tremendous amount of dedication and commitment and passion to do something so critical that doesn't seem to be recognized for just how important it is or compensated properly either. So I constantly admire the people I meet that have dedicated themselves to that professional choice.
Oh, wow. Very nice, Karen. Thank you. Dawn, if you could improve the world by doing one thing, what would you choose to do?
Great question. I think I've been fortunate to be able to travel the world and develop a company and meet a lot of people. And I think one of the things that I think is missing many times is the relationships that people can develop no matter where they are and who they are. I grew up in New York City, where in an interesting area where we were the most ethnically diverse segment of the city in the entire country, and so my orientation was always different, where I treated everybody the same and with a certain degree of respect. And so I think what I like to see more of, which could make the world better, is if people respect each other and get along, because there's so much that we can learn from each other, so much we can gain by working effectively together. And I see that in a lot of the international initiatives that we take on as a company. Everywhere we go, we do business very successfully because I think as a basis, I treat people with a certain degree of respect, and I get that same respect back.
Very nice. Kent, and you have to be honest with this question. So if you had to be with someone of your family member 24/7 for a whole week.
If I had to be with who for a
With a
week?
family member 24/7 for the whole week, who would it be?
With one of my family members? Oh, yeah, I mean, well, of course I gotta say my wife, but.
He knows the session is getting recorded.
But
Kent, if you can have the mic, yeah.
you know, with you know, hey, I'm a grandfather of 10 wonderful grandkids, and I gotta say they absolutely adore their grandpa. They are so fun, you know, and so I've got, you know, and it's hard to pick and choose. It seems like my favorite grandchild changes every time I'm with each one. And so my great joy in life, if I could spend a whole day, a whole week with somebody, it'd be with my grandchildren. And particularly right now, I've got a granddaughter that I think I just can't wait to see and be with, because they're so fun. And they, you know, they have that new energy and that new love of life that we should all have. You know, when we were kids, we all loved one another. We all played with one another. We all got along. You know, occasional spat over a toy or something, but life was wonderful. We didn't worry. We knew we'd be taken care of. You know, just wonderful. You know, and so that would be to be with the children, because they bring that back in you. They bring that joy of life back to you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Kent, for answering it, and you're right. So Henry, let me start the question with you. Right now, entrepreneurs are not confined to any geographical area because of the globalization. And when this word was coined in the 1980s, people realized that being in any place is as easy as being in seconds. But tell me, what is the reality of the global startup landscape?
Well, it's amazing. I think the past 10 years, probably 10, 15 years, we have seen really from all over the world in different regions, you know, very young executives, and you know, have a great idea, start their own company and blah, blah, blah. It could be in Asia Pacific, it could be in Latin America, South America, and it could be back home here. A lot of companies and even, you know, venture capitalists are funding some of those incubators and small startup companies. Now, just based on my travel experiences, I think for some of the entrepreneurs here, you know, it's not easy because your resources are limited, right? So obviously, you have to really focus right now in terms of your business here. You know, you need funding and you need clientele base. So in terms of globalization, it's very important because you cannot be everywhere. So my advice is, for example, in Asia, which I'm quite familiar with, just to give you an example, in Hong Kong, there are over 3,000 startups. Wow. Of that, 1,000 fintech companies. And the Hong Kong government is supporting, actually having a fund in excess of 200 million to fund those incubators. Doesn't have to be a Hong Kong company. It can be a Atlanta company, Alpharetta companies that set up office, and they even provide subsidized spaces, workspaces. So Singapore is the same situation, very aggressive, and you know, over probably 10,000 startups Singapore because of Southeast Asia. Obviously, China is the big player, over 20-something unicorns. When I say unicorn, these are variation of company in excess of 1 billion. India is catching up. You know, India has, I mean, just from my own travel, easily 7,000-8,000 more startup companies in India. So when you look at the region, Southeast Asia is a huge economy. You know, close to 3 billion, a little bit more than $3 trillion. I mean, right after India in terms of GDP. So ASEAN is huge because of a young population, and also of the entire 650 million population, close to 400 million are internet users, and those are aged 15 to 25. This is huge opportunity in startups. The same can be said for Brazil, Latin America, and then you have the 4 countries, you know, so large: Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. You look at basically total GDP of $4 trillion. That's pretty huge. Those are opportunities, and you know, Brazilian companies and certainly Mexican companies are being funded by capitalists from U.S., from China, even from India. So when you look at outer space, you have to decide which region you want to go into. I would not recommend going everywhere.
Right.
Pick a region and then find 1 or 2 starting points, your priority cities.
Got it.
And then whether it's finding customer or funding, because that is exactly what you need right now. So as you continue to grow and you commercialize and blah, 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 then you are allowed to, you have more resources and also working capital and funding to take you to other regions.
Very nice, thank you. So you've just opened up the level of opportunity, and you're saying that landscape is real.
It's
Looks
real.
like that's what you're saying. So Ken, following up to his question, we just talked about startups can actually start anywhere. But tell us, who is responsible for developing these leaders and help grow and connect these leaders who are into the startup ecosystem?
Well, I mean, they could turn to a lot of sources to help them with that, but they have to develop those connections. They have to know.
And you can look at the audience as well, Kent.
And that's one of the great things about Chambers of Commerce. That's one of the things about all the members of the panel. And one of the things that we definitely do is to help them to make these relationships. Somebody already mentioned that. Build relationships. Like, I'm just looking at some cards here that there's yours on top, see? But the rest of these cards are ones I've just got yesterday. You know, I meet a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, I ask a lot of questions, I find out what their needs are. I'll refer them to Karen over here, I'll refer them to Gwinnett Tech, where I'm, on the board. We refer people up to Forsyth Chamber if that will help them best. We refer them to Alpharetta Chamber. So we're there to help people and to put them in the right direction. And one of the things that we ask people is, please talk to somebody first. So many times entrepreneurs go out and start a business, they jump in, they get excited, and they jump into it, and they find out it's the wrong business, or it's the wrong time, or it's the wrong place, or they didn't know the right stuff, or they didn't know the right connections. Come talk to somebody first. Develop a brain trust before you go out and open your business. Talk to people. Talk to the chambers. We can tell you exactly, no, you don't want to start that business right now. Or you want to go up to New York and do it. Or I've got an expert in online services right here. I've got an expert on making connections. I've got an expert on that. Talk to them first. But typically if we help them find a need and fill it, find a need. If there's not a need for it, you're in trouble right off the bat. If you do have something that already exists, and if you're passionate about it, do it, but do it better. Find something that, gosh, I wish that the airlines did this. I wish that something would do this. I wish that this, well, quit saying I wish. Go out and do it better than they do, and you'll be successful. Or find that need. That's how number one leaders get out there, is they find a need and they fill it. And so we try to point people in that right direction, and I mean, we give them any kind of training under the sun. I literally have helped develop tens of thousands of entrepreneurs myself in my lifetime. It's fun, it's exciting, but it breaks my heart when they come to us after. And so I just had a woman yesterday say, she opened a yoga shop, and she's like, I'm going broke, I'm so sad, I'm in there crying all the time, nobody's walking to my doors. And it's like, I wish you would have talked to us first. I would have told you right off the bat, that's the wrong location. You should have done this, you should have changed your signage, you should have done this, but there's so many answers if they just know where to look first.
And probably looks like you're saying Chamber of Commerce is one such resource that people should look at before even starting their business. But also the other message you just gave us is take that step. Instead of just thinking, I wish, take that step and make it happen.
People get the inspiration, or they a lot of them say, what if I've sat next to people on the airplane, I wish that somebody would do this. Well, this computer program, it doesn't do this and this. Well, quit saying I wish, and you go do it, and do it better, and do it right.
Definitely.
But that's one of the number one things of being an entrepreneur, being successful in business. Get off your butt and go do it now.
Definitely. Thank you, Kent, for that message. Don, the next question is to you. Is usually when we talk about startups, we talk about technology. And of course, this is a technology hub here where we are sitting today. So you're listening to startups that are doing on stuff on AI, or even sometimes healthcare technology, but your business does something different from the traditional businesses of technology startups. So can you tell us what that is and how it all started?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. We Princeton, which is Princeton Healthcare, we actually have two companies, Princeton Healthcare and Princeton Technologies. We actually started out working with bringing technologies to hospitals and healthcare in key markets, initially in the U.S., and then we started branching out initially in Africa, of all places, and then we went from Africa to South America, and South America to Asia and India. And so we were bringing existing technologies, innovative technologies, to institutions that needed to be able to provide these clinical procedures that may not be available. Now, an interesting thing, the reason we went into emerging markets, and I always tell entrepreneurs, you want to have the experience. I was fortunate enough early in my career that I worked for a big company, Siemens. I was executive for Siemens at a young age, and so I was traveling Europe and got a lot of exposure. And so it gave me an opportunity to see where there were niches of opportunity that were underserved. And so I started saying, well, the U.S. is fairly saturated. Let me look at potentially other areas that may have a need and is underserved. And so bringing technologies, and as initially starting in Africa, bringing technologies that didn't exist, these technologies were saving lives. It was fascinating. They didn't have the diagnostic capability in certain markets to be able to determine what the incidence was or the problem that a person had. So it was very interesting to see how technology could improve the quality of healthcare. So we as a company started out in that area, and then we started expanding into providing management services. So we can manage a hospital. So we went from technologies to managing institutions to developing financing I'd like to say we're vertically integrated. So we can do from A to Z. We can build a hospital, we can finance the hospital, we can manage the hospital, and we can do everything from A to Z. We can design the hospital. It's very interesting. And so what has happened is it has created a number of pockets of opportunities. So in India, I'm financing a hospital in India, whereas, for example, in what we do in Brazil right now, we're developing a cancer center, which we're developing and funding and bringing proton technology, which would be the first of its kind in all of South America. So we're doing some very interesting things. But again, is understanding as an entrepreneur where the opportunity is, understanding the market, and then make an assessment. What is your probability of success in that market with these technologies? And do you have the capacity to make it a reality?
Sure. So if a management back either in India or Asia or even South America called your company to say, hey, our hospital is failing, do you see that as an opportunity?
Absolutely, and that's another interesting point. What you want to do is surround yourself with also expertise, because the more expertise you have in the house, the more you can do. So to your point, for example, we have I have managers in the markets, which I think is very important. I think even maybe Henry alluded to, we have people in the markets who are experts for their markets. So we have representatives and consultants in India, in Brazil, in China, and the Caribbean, and so they know the market, and then what they do is they go to that particular institution and find out what are your needs. So to your question, Nazira, we can now, you say we're in Mexico, they're doing an expansion of a hospital, they contact us and we say, okay, what are your needs? And they'll say, well, we have an expansion, we need $20 million, to expand the hospital. So we'll look at it and say, well, we're bringing the financing to help bring the $20 million to do the expansion, but we'll also integrate technologies to help you utilize that space efficiently so you get the maximum return.
Awesome, thank you so much. Now that we know what you do in your sphere, that helps us with any contacts that I or anyone else comes here to reach out to you. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Don. Karen, so let's talk about what is a business incubator. What are the upsides? And of course, everything has a downside, so we want you to let us know the downsides as well. And how are you responsible for developing women talent in the technology industry, where it usually seems to be a sort of not too much discrimination, but discrimination to some extent?
Well, to answer the first part of that question, so a business incubator. A business business incubator usually has a dedicated space, and it provides programs to help startup companies to grow and succeed. That's the bottom line that's common across all incubators. Those programs would include mentoring, educational programs, investor introductions, and other connections, as well as industry introductions, which makes it a little bit different from, for example, an accelerator, which is a program that you apply to as a startup, and maybe you're accepted and maybe you're not. And if you're accepted, you're in the program, an intensive program for 3 to 4 months. Sometimes the program will provide funding in exchange for a portion of equity. So it's somewhat different.
Very nice. So Tech Alpharetta is an business incubator.
Yes, so we are a business incubator.
So I'm glad you told me about the accelerator. I think if we are not in the startup arena or in that field, we would not understand what all these different terms are.
Right. So, and to give an example, so we're an incubator. An example of an accelerator would be if you've heard of the TechStars program, global program. They have an Atlanta cohort, and they run for 3 months at a time and take applications. So that would be an accelerator program.
Sure. And how are you responsible for developing women in technology?
Well, we try to do that here in a number of ways. We recently started Tech Alpharetta's Women's Forum to provide a forum and opportunity for female executives in STEM fields out here in this northern corridor. I like to think of it as the North Fulton South Forsyth corridor, to provide those female technology executives with an opportunity to network and share best practices and provide educational programs to them as well. And we just kicked that off last year. It's been very successful. We have a number of charter members that we've started with who are senior women in technology in the area, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm for that, and you're a member as well. So that's one of the things that we do, and that program is going to also specifically focus on mentoring school-age girls to encourage them to pursue STEM careers as well. And the other area that we're working on to encourage women and girls to enter STEM fields is we've recently entered into a partnership with the new STEM high school that's being built in Alpharetta and is going to be opening in fall of 2021. That's a Fulton County magnet school open to all students in Fulton County. There'll be one in South Fulton and one out here in Alpharetta. And so we've partnered with them, and we are working with them to provide business partners, the companies that are part of Tech Alpharetta's board, for example, that will be able, and we're also working with them on curriculum design. It's going to be a very novel and different curriculum than what's been standard in the Fulton County schools, and we hope to encourage both young boys and girls to pursue STEM careers through that pursuit.
Very nice. Since I have you with the mic, the question that I have is, are people aware as much as you would like about these incubators, or is that something only when they're considering entrepreneurship? Like if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have no idea what you're talking about. Right. So should startups or even people who think they might be interested in becoming entrepreneurs start to connect with people like you beforehand? And just do the way what Kent was saying earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and you're absolutely right. Right here we're so entrenched in technology that I sometimes lose sight of the fact that this is not the norm for people outside of our industry vertical, and so a lot of times people aren't aware that incubators exist and that there's programs that can help them grow, and they feel like they're out there alone as a brand new company with no resources to help them, and like the services that a chamber can provide as well to young companies, so can the incubators. And it's the incubator advantage for a young tech startup, for example, is not only providing community, because being a startup or an entrepreneur can be a very lonely pursuit, and if you join an incubator, you're in a community of like-minded individuals trying to accomplish similar goals, but it can also provide you with the type of advice and resources similar to what Kent was describing as well, to provide them with advice. You don't want them to to try something that's already been tried and somebody failed at. Let's guide them down the proper paths that are going to make them likely to be more successful. So I highly recommend it, and not just this incubator, any incubator. If a company's a tech startup and interested in or thinking about becoming a startup, to talk to one of the incubators in the area, as well as the Chamber of Commerce.
I feel.
Okay, can I just add
Yes,
something
please
to that?
do. Yes.
This topic gets me so excited because,
Many topics do get you excited. This is the fourth time I'm hearing you say that.
people need to understand that tech entrepreneurship is gold right now. It's platinum, it's diamond, because it's like my father said. My father grew up on a farm, and he remembers the day that he had to plow the field with a horse and plow, or with an oxen and plow. And he was amazed when he got to see a cell phone and a telephone. And he was amazed when I remember when we got our first TV. I remember when we got our first color TV. He just feels like it was a miracle in his life that he's seen these things. But he also mentioned, 60% of the jobs that were existent when I was a kid are gone. And we know that today as Chambers of Commerce. We know that 60% of the jobs that exist right now today will be gone in 20 years. They won't even exist. But there will be another 60% developed because of tech and because of entrepreneurship. So there's a gold mine right now in this.
Right.
So what all of these folks do, and you said the same thing in the hospitals, and tech is so wonderful too because it changes every day. So you have to keep going to school, you have to keep learning, you have to keep reading, you have to keep seeing other people's examples. You've got to keep up to pace, because it literally changes every day and you'll get left behind very quickly. So I get excited about that.
Can I throw in some numbers to substantiate that? Actually, according to a few report, IMF is one of them. I think the next 10 years, there's going to be, while a lot of people are losing jobs, but on the technology side, experts and professionals, there will be a shortage of 80 to 100 million globally. China alone leads about 12 to 15 million tech professionals and experts. So on the one hand, you're losing jobs, conventional, traditional industry, and on the other hand, technology is going to be the future.
Wow.
Right, and let me just add to that skilled tech workforce is in high demand out here along this corridor because of the number of companies that have open positions, and there's hardly enough skilled tech workforce to fill them. So that's definitely where the future opportunities lie.
That's why the state of Georgia right now in their technical colleges pays 100% of your education if you're going into computer field.
Very nice. Definitely. Definitely. So James, coming to you, 2 years ago, if people would have told me I can become an entrepreneur or I would leave my job, I'd have never believed that at all. I'd always considered myself a very good career employee. I offer my best to the career that I am, and I expect the paycheck every month. And suddenly my mind shifted and I wanted to try this entrepreneurial field, and now if you would give me $1 million to get me into a job, I would say no thanks, right? And I'm thinking that's what every entrepreneur feels like. But my question to you is, what are those important factors that drive entrepreneurship?
So we, and I'll echo a lot of what Kent's already said, that we serve almost oftentimes like a consulting firm, and working with entrepreneurs of all varieties. Certainly tech is a central part of that, but the yoga center is a great example. People who are chasing a dream. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what Kent and I and we all get to do really is we help facilitate people's dreams. And that's really it. There are, in my view, in looking at a central part of what makes an entrepreneur, it's that. They have a dream that they're passionate about. Certainly, Karen sees this probably every day. I think I probably see it a little less often because you get to come in to a building with these folks every day. What's astonishing is how many people that I think we all interact with who, they just haven't found it yet. They have not come across that, or they haven't made it a priority to find that yet. But the identifying where that need is, having that thought of, gosh, that's not only a need, but something that I could be really excited about. And I'm sure you had that moment, you were just describing it, really. And then once you have that experience of chasing your own dream, of building something around that. To my knowledge, there is no school you can go to teach you how to chase a dream. But at the end of the day, it's about networking with people who know how to help you facilitate that and care enough about facilitating that and see an opportunity in joining you in facilitating that. And ultimately, that's really at the heart and soul of what chambers of commerce, what incubators do, and it's really at the central to everything else, but it's central to being, in my view at least, to being an entrepreneur.
Is infrastructure or regulation or global connectivity, which of those are important, or are they equally important in driving entrepreneurship as well?
So, if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, so I came from a government affairs background, and my job really was to be an advocate for business and fighting regulation and getting more capital into the economy to make sure that all of those were true. In the last 10 years, though, as I have developed and matured as a professional, but also traveled around the world, entrepreneurialism can grow in a next to oxygen-free environment because people, again, it's driven by a dream. And it is remarkable to me the things that people overcome to accomplish that. Having said that, the fewer the better. The freer, at least in my experience, the more open of a regulatory environment that supports entrepreneurialism, the better that is. And having the infrastructure of access to capital, having and incubators and talent, of course, you're going to succeed. But I remember being many years ago in a very rural part of Peru and meeting about 5 different folks who were making these handcrafted rugs, and they were selling them all over the world. They had huge hurdles to overcome. It took them years to get there. But I stood there and I thought, well, I'm watching 5 successful entrepreneurs live their dream against what many people would have given up against in the past. So yes, it absolutely helps, but it is also, I think, it speaks to the power of entrepreneurialism, how it will exist in almost any environment.
Okay, since you still have the mic, my other question was, we do have people from Cumming or Forsyth County here or listening on the video, and so what is the eligibility to join Chamber of Commerce? And when a tech industry joins your group, are they going to be diluted because of all the various industries available in there?
So we are in probably the second year of a big change for us as an organization, and chambers across the country are doing similar initiatives. But we are really moving away from the idea of traditional membership. And what we are really, and I had this conversation earlier before the program started, and that is we view any business person, really any citizen for that matter, resident of the community, as a part of our organization. People can come to anything that they would like to. Our doors are wide open. However, within that, we have industry segments. We have a very active tech execs group led by a very gifted member of our team named Scott Evans. And so we have that also with manufacturing. We have it with an HR council. So there's probably about 15 different industry segments or professional segments that people can get into, so that dilution really does not happen. However, we also offer a lot of activities and programmatic activity and focused activities that would open the doors to people not in your industry. And often what we find is people who are not in the same industry can often work very well together as either vendors or investors. And so I know Kent's Chamber is an excellent example of one where that's built in a similar way in terms of being able to find your niche, but also explore other opportunities as well.
Thank you so much, James, for that. Henry, the next question is to you is about, let's talk about connecting investors and founders, right? So we know as startup founders, the first thing that people are looking for is funding. They're looking for capital, and they've used up all the family and friends funding. But you also are aware, because of your global travel, of investors who are looking for funding. So you see there are gap. Sometimes it's the connection that hasn't happened, and I see you as one of the many people who are doing those connections. Do you see a gap there? And if a company is in the US, are investors from Hong Kong interested in funding a startup here, or vice versa?
I guess the first thing is
If you can
it's
use the
all boils down to the business plan. Just like when you apply for a job, your personal resume, your CV, you try to convince the other party that you are the best, that you would make a difference, that they should hire you. So in terms of business startups, the same thing. Your business plan, you need to write a good business plan. Obviously, you need to have a great management team and also financial resources, right? But those are not going to come easily. But having said that, the business plan basically reflects your idea, how you want to commercialize it and turn it into a profitable operation. So you are putting together the business plan to satisfy your own need, your goals, short-term, medium-term goals. But on the flip side, I can tell you, venture capitalists, they receive 100 business plans. Probably maybe 10 make it to the first round, and then ultimately it's going to be maybe 3 successful cases where they'll put funding into it. And for angel funds, certainly, the minimum return is looking at 25% or north of it, annual basis. So the fund that I've been with for the past 4 and 5 years, we are more established, and we're into sort of companies have already established their presence in the alternative energy field. So that's a bit different. But having said that, being an entrepreneur, you have to be frugal, right? Your own money, your relatives' money, the first round, very important, the social commitment to the eyes of the venture fund provider. Number 2, you have to convey a strong story that, my idea is great, it's going to work, and more importantly, it's going to produce results that will meet your return on investment. That's key. And also, just as important, entrepreneur may be more technical focused, having the technology. He or she needs a huge, very important management team. Now, to start with, you cannot employ everybody, right? So having an important management team is so key that you can work together to achieve that goal. And this is a piece of advice for startups. Obviously, right now you're at the phase where you can allow to pay $100,000 to have an expert that can help you with marketing, blah, 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 blah. Guess what? I think someone mentioned mentor. Find someone that it doesn't have to be in the same industry, that he or she can share with you the success and failures. And maybe even try to convince him or her to be on your advisory board, that maybe compensation will come later. That may be one way to really impress the funding partners, the investors. So obviously, all this will lead to the financial aspect. Financial projection has to be realistic. This is something that the team put together. It will help us grow the next 4, 5, 6 years. But more importantly, that having the financial forecast projection that allow the whole team to spend money wisely. You need to have 3 to 6 months operating capital and cash, and also to prepare for the downside expectation, just in case there's a downside economy cycle. You need at least 2 to 3 years to pay your bills, having the capital. So putting everything together, I think that's something that the investors will look at it seriously, and they'll take you to the next rounds of interview and potential funding.
Okay, that sounds good information that you've given. Is it true that more than 80% of startups don't have a business plan?
Right or wrong, I guess some are inadequate, some are not comprehensive, and some business plans are very long. Just like a resume. I used to, my personal resume in my early days, 3-4 pages. No one have time. You basically have maybe 10, 30 seconds of the investors time to look at this. So a great business plan should be no more than 4 pages. That's my own. I think 3 would be ideal. You cannot be so condensed and precise. But some segment of business, you might need more information on your executive summary in terms of competition, how you stand out ahead of the competitors. So I think 3 to 4 pages would be ideal. And before I conclude this remark, I also want to mention, I think, I forget who mentioned about the underserved. I think it was Don. This is huge opportunity in Southeast Asia. 650 million population, okay, in terms of financial services. Payment is part of financial services, wealth management, the technology aspect. Huge opportunity. There are about 300 million underserved, at least 100 million underbanked, and then 200 million citizens unbanked. So when you put everything together, payment, wealth management, mobile payment, you name it, those are keys, insurance too.
Very nice. Thank you, Henry, for that. So, Don, if I had to use these 2 words anywhere else, I would be booed, but I can safely say crossing borders here. So I'm talking about how do entrepreneurs cross borders in not just trade, but again in establishing the business relationships. Give us example of how did you, like, you were brought up and raised in US. How did you even think about crossing the borders?
Very good question. I think you kind of have to have it in your blood. I think is, as an entrepreneur, you have to, I think, be willing to say, is this something that I think I can do? Is this something that I'm willing to take the risk? Because as an entrepreneur, you have to really be willing to take risks that most people are not willing to take risks to do. And so, when I got started, I think I looked at opportunities in the U.S. and I said, well, I could be in the U.S. or I could be overseas. So I was competing against companies here in the U.S. You're getting a small business, a little bit of opportunity, had all this experience, with a little bit of opportunity, so you're competing against the giants. So I said, well, what if I was to go outside of that sphere and look at opportunities where there was less competition? And so I always had a fairly good marketing head, and I said, well, if there's less competition, it should be ultimately more opportunity. And then, as Henry and I were alluding to, the underserved. And so I started looking at that, and surprisingly enough, I did my first big project in Africa, which was underserved. It was in Côte d'Ivoire. I didn't speak any French, no more than comment ça va, but I had people on the ground who spoke French. But it was underserved. There was a great need, and I hit it at the right time. So I got my first multi-million-dollar contract, not in the U.S., but I did some in the U.S., but my first big international project was in Africa. So I think it's important, though, for entrepreneurs to understand that international business is not for the faint-hearted, if I could put it in that perspective. So it's good to have either the experience through your training. I was fortunate, as I alluded to earlier, to have the training, so I was comfortable going international. So I had a foundation that allowed me to say, I don't mind going to Africa or to Europe or South America or Asia. It didn't matter to me because I said, I can do business anywhere. I was that confident or cocky or whatever way you want to put it. However, I would not say that's the best way to go forward with everybody. You need to have a foundation, and if you don't have a foundation, you have part of your team members. I think, as the gentleman had mentioned, have people, mentors or advisors or people part of your team who do have that experience. So if you don't have that experience, it's complemented by somebody on your team who has worked in that market, because again, there's some challenges, some nuances that you have to navigate through, which is going to create the opportunity. So as I mentioned, I was comfortable, I was willing to take the risk, and I also had a fairly good understanding of building, how would I say, marketing and sales teams, because I was doing that in the U.S. And so I know, well, you got to get good people who present well, who know the market, who can present to clients very well, present themselves so that we can get the business. Because what you can do is go into the market, have the wrong people, and then get no business, and then you spent a lot of money and time. You want to get to the market and do well. So there are opportunities there, but you got to look at everything and say, okay, I have, maybe with my colleagues here, I have a great technology. How do I get that technology into that market? Well, first of all, you got to size it up. I say market sizing, what Henry was alluding to in terms of business plan. What's your value proposition? You don't want to be in a space where you're competing with the giants, because they'll crush you. If I could just put it in perspective, if you have a competing technology, you have to have a technology that has a niche that can do very well. And so you get that niche technology, you can build on that base, but you get into the market where there's really no competition, and then you run that business and grow that business and get the investments and things that you need to grow the business. But you have to find the right opportunity. So training is important. If you don't have the training, you have to have the right people on your team, or have the intellect to bring people in that particular market who can actually help you be successful. Now, to that point, one of the things I also did early on in my career, I utilized the U.S. Embassy in certain countries, U.S. Commercial Service. So these are some things that are available to you as a resource. The state of Georgia has representatives in certain countries. I utilize them. I use everything that I can get for free initially, and then where I couldn't get it for free, I would pay a certain amount to utilize the service, but it gave me people on the ground who had a great reputation and who knew the market, who I could work with. And so again, as an entrepreneur, you say, okay, well, I want to get into Brazil. Well, guess what? The state of Georgia has a representative in Brazil who could do some of the legwork. It could identify some strategic partners for you, or representatives who can present your product in that market. So there are ways to do it, but you have to be, as an entrepreneur, willing to take the risk and do the work.
Very nice. And Kent, piggying back on Don's answer, before the big giants or the big companies, the international growth was reserved for them. It was usually the big industries or the big Googles, if I may, that could expand to international growth. But today it's not so. You are the CEO of your Chamber of Commerce, where I'm thinking you have probably 100 members. So theoretically, suppose you have 100 members, and if they all came to you and said, we want to go global, when would be the right time for them to go global?
The very first time. It's a good time anytime. It is a good time anytime. But like he said, you got to have the courage. You got to get off your butt, stop wishing, and go do it. You got to find the need and fill it. But the very first thing you do if you're going to go global is you go to the consulate. I'm just like, you see my shaking my head with him. There's already people who know, like I've got one client, one member of our chamber who's in the hemp business. Now, people are just understanding hemp is not marijuana. A lot of people still don't understand that. It's not THC, it's CBD. And there's so many other things, for thousands of years, man used hemp as a medicine, as clothing, as house building materials. And it's just when Big Pharma got big that they, scared people off of hemp, and now people are scared that it's THC and it's marijuana. It's not, it's a whole different thing. But this guy, the first thing he looked is, well, the U.S. doesn't have the laws yet to do this, or to farm it, or to process it, or to sell it. So he went for it. First thing you do, of course he came to the chamber. We guided him. Go to the consulate first. Find out which countries want that. Find out which countries allow that. Find out, like we found out there was, most countries in the world except for Sweden don't allow it. Who knows? They're one of the most liberal countries in the world, but they don't allow, CBD. But we did the research. We went to the consulates. We found out. And now he's got, because of his work with other farmers, now he's got farms in Oregon, he's got farms in Colorado, he's got farms in Bulgaria, he's got farms over in Romania, he's got product he's selling over in Asia, all over the place. He told me the other day, I just, wow, he got off the phone, let me take this call, 30 seconds later, just got an order for 23,000 units. And it's just crazy what you can do if you go global, and any time's a good time. Now it's just, I heard the numbers yesterday that the hemp market by 2030 is going to be $80 billion. And and I got to expand upon something James saying too, because in the world of Amazon, chambers and businesses have had to change. And so we are a lot different. We are bridges to the community, to all folks. We work actively in Johns Creek, not with just business, but we work with the government, with the city council, with the mayor, with all of the faiths. We do a lot of interfaith work. You'd be surprised how that builds up the community and encourages entrepreneurship. I just telling him, come out to Gwinnett Tech, we'll show you how we can help your church members do better. But it's like, you know, with all the orgs and the nonprofits working together, and there's just so much opportunity that's out there right now. People just don't understand because they're not talking to the right people.
If it's okay, I want to
Yes,
add
please
one
do.
other thing, something that we found building on what Kent's saying, that and also Don. What we find often is that not just startups, but also, you know, companies of larger size, a lot of our tax dollars are going to programs to help startups, entrepreneurs, companies of all size to make greater, to grow their businesses in other countries, and certainly vice versa. There are, in the state of Georgia alone, there are some incredible programs, depending on what industry the startup is in, but certainly in technology, initiatives to really support that. It is probably the best kept secret, unfortunately, around, and people really don't know, and chambers are a great access to that, certainly incubators are, and so I just really would encourage folks to start with their local chambers, but also reach out to if that's not the best fit for you, reach out to the state of Georgia and the State Department of Economic Development. They have some tremendous initiatives that go on there, compared really to a lot of other states around the country. And certainly the United States government has some, and particularly in the Department of Commerce, some incredible programs, and they are grossly underutilized, and those are our tax dollars. We should be getting a return on that,
Sure.
and the best way to do that is to reach out and to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
could
good.
I add
Yes,
something
please
to
do,
that
yes.
as well? Yeah, from the incubator side, I completely agree with what all of you guys have been saying. It's also a very little known fact among the tech startup community. You know, how do we do business globally? And what they don't realize right away, which is one of the values of getting involved with an incubator, is that, you know, part of our job as leading the incubators is to grow our network to the point that we can immediately connect them with the resources they need. So we have relationships with the Hong Kong Association of Atlanta and the local chamber and the Metro Atlanta Chamber and the UK Consulate and the Economic Development Organization in Calgary, Canada. We've developed global relationships so we can immediately point our startups in the appropriate direction when they decide that they want to globalize their businesses. So that the knowledge is there and all they have to do is ask.
And a very real example of that, there's a small, it was a startup robotics company in Forsyth County. 10 years ago, they came into our office, and they were during the recession, and they had, you know, really pulled back quite a bit, and they're in a very important niche, and so they were picked up literally a Wall Street Journal article saying, gosh, the niche that we serve seems to be growing, mentioned Brazil, growing in Brazil. We introduced them because of our connections, to the State Department of Economic Development, to the U.S. Department of Commerce. They now, within that niche, have a 95% market share in Brazil. Now, it took them about a decade to grow that, but interestingly, we hadn't heard from this company in a few years. The president of the company just called me. He's getting ready to sell the company, and he said, I wanted to call and thank you. Of course, I asked what my percentage would be. Of course, you know, unfortunately, when you sign up for the Chamber of Commerce business, you also sign away those privileges. But really, that's a great example of where, and actually, had he not called, I would have never known that. But that it really starting with those resources, and it took. To my recollection, I think we met with him maybe twice, and it was probably an hour and a half of his time that opened up some additional doors. So I wish. My guess is there's a lot of other examples that I don't even know about, but that is a great example where someone has done that.
So you made one of our audience very happy because Surya runs a robotics company here, so you can expect him to come.
Please do. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He'll come see you. So Karen, you sort of answered my next question, but I'll still go ahead and ask because I want some more detailed information on that. Usually before, entrepreneurs and startups mean only in US it happened, you know, and it was it was in America. But now you see it happening across globally. But tell us about incubators, because you do start. I actually went to an incubator in Bangalore this time, and we had an interview and a session there. So I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so similar to where our office is back in the US. And so we have to connect you with them. They're very interested in connecting with you. That was one of my goals for this session, is if you can sign an MOU with them, all those startups over there and all the startups can see mutual common ground in opportunities. But my question is, are incubators, how did it start? Like, it's a new concept, I think, at least for people like me. Are they funded by government agencies, or how do they make it work? Does every incubator have a Karen?
Well, I don't know about that, but well, the interesting thing about incubators is, a true startup incubator is not able to be financially independent or self-sustaining on its own. So there's really three business models that you see. You'll see the investor-funded incubators, and of course, Atlanta Tech Village is a perfect example of that. David Cummings funded that one. You see the corporate-funded incubators. Comcast has the farm over in the Battery area in Cobb County. And then you have municipal, city, government, university-funded incubators. Our largest sponsor is the city of Alpharetta, for example. And there's a number of incubators around the country in the Southeast that are partially funded by their Chamber of Commerce or the city's economic development arm. So those are the three ways that incubators currently operate. Otherwise, because of the very fact that we're helping to subsidize the startups by charging way below market rent or way below market membership for the services we provide, otherwise you can't make ends meet. So it definitely does require an investment. But the thing I think that's important, especially for governments and municipalities to consider, is the fact that we're tech economic development engines for the community. We're producing new companies that are growing new jobs for the community, and in relatively large numbers as well. In terms of does every incubator have somebody at the helm, we're a little bit different than most of the incubators here locally, only because the incubator is just a piece of Tech Alpharetta, which is a nonprofit. So we have our startup incubator piece, we have our tech executive events that we run out here in Alpharetta once a month for all tech executives along the corridor out here. And then we have a strategic board that also helps guide the city on tech infrastructure. So we're a bit of a unique animal in Georgia because we're a hybrid of sorts, because our nonprofit is looking to grow technology and innovation, and those are the three ways that we're working to do it. Most incubators are an incubator, and that's the focus. Some of them are an incubator plus a venture capital or investor firm. So there's a couple different ways for them to exist, but they all definitely have somebody at the helm running and overseeing and making the network, expanding the network and developing the connections.
So you don't have to answer the next question, but the question is, do you feel limited by the city government in what you can do and what you can't do? Or do you think if it was not this collaborative relationship, you could do more?
Oh, no, I'm happy to answer that. Actually, if it weren't for the city, we couldn't exist. But we have a great partnership, and they provide a tremendous amount of resources and input and ideas for us. So it's very much been, the city's been a terrific resource for us all around. And because the city intentionally rolled this organization off as an independent nonprofit with the understanding that we needed to operate independently as our own organization, we're fully autonomous in our decision making.
Very nice. So I'm not going to go into details with the rest of the questions, but I'm going to give a few minutes for the audience to ask questions of us, and then final comments. I have a couple of questions that you can answer before we close out. So any of you have any questions, please go ahead, and you already know their expertise. I think Surya definitely has one.
Sure.
It's like now he does. Yes, you can give it to Surya.
Yeah, I mean, so I moved here in Georgia just 3 years ago, and I was in Illinois for about like 15 years. So that city, I mean, where I was in US for like almost 15 years, it's a small city, like Bloomington, Illinois. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they start some business, and because of the population, because of the connection they see and the market, so a lot of business I have seen like they failed. I mean, even the restaurant business, like the yogurt shop they were talking about, and like those kind of business they fail. So is there like each state? Is there any limitations, like what business we can start, what we cannot? I mean, is there any guidance from Chamber of Commerce or anywhere they can approach and see, like what are all the business areas currently there is a need? For example, I mean, before they really start a business, like just to see a list of demand, like what is currently in that market. I mean, every state differs, right? I mean, so state of Georgia has a different need comparing to state of Illinois. So the state of Illinois is pretty much cornfields, and they have some kind of excavation machines and all the agricultural equipments. That's a big demand, and that's why the Caterpillar was there and grown. But I'm trying to find a place where
There's a better scope
there is
for
a
industry
better,
in
yeah.
Georgia.
So what scope of business could be better for each state?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's a good example. Right here in North Fulton and South Forsyth, there is now 660,000 Indians, okay?
Wow.
So what is a gold mine right now is anything Indian. Whether it's grocery, whether it's restaurant, whether it's clothing. There's a gold mine right now. You know, Johns Creek just became the most diverse city in the whole state of Georgia, number 44 in the whole nation, most diverse. I go in my Walmart and I'm the only Caucasian in it. But one thing I love about the Indian people is they love technology. They love to spend money. They love to make money. They love to spend money.
And spicy food.
So there's a regional thing right here. You know, I saw a new grocery store opening up, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to be packed. Because some people say, what is that? I've never heard of it. They're going to be packed, and they were, absolutely. And of course, each city has restrictions. You know, like right now, there's all kinds of language because vape shoppings are appearing everywhere. And nobody knows what they've got in them, and their kids are. You got even grade schoolers smoking it in school because it looks like a pencil or a pen, and you know we got a real issue with that, and we got a real issue, you know, with a lot of things that you don't want in a good community. So you need to talk to the city planners, you know, somebody at City Hall. You can talk to the chambers of commerce. We can guide you in the right directions of what things you don't want to do right now. Because, and I can tell you, even businesses in Johns Creek, you may not want to go into that. City council won't support that right now. Or yeah, that's really hot right now. You may want to go. So chambers of commerce can guide you in the right direction. We can connect you. We know everybody at City Hall. I mean, James and I, we know everybody in the city, everybody in the county, everybody in the state. We've got those connections to let you know what's the right thing. And like I said, please, please, please talk to someone first. Don't get excited and I want to open this and then go do it and then find out I'm failing. There's so much information to be had first if you just build those connections and go to the right spot.
And those, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, and I was going to add to that, also check, you can always talk to the city's economic development leads, but you can get a lot of really helpful economic development statistics from the websites. For example, growalpharetta.com, that's the City of Alpharetta's economic development website, filled with metrics about primary industry, you know, educational level of the residents, all the kind of metrics you really want to look at before you consider starting or expanding a business in that city. Metro Atlanta Chamber is a treasure trove as well of statistics, economic statistics. So there's a lot of information already out there, but the chambers and the economic development divisions are always happy to talk and meet and share information because they want you to start and succeed.
So generally, we take an approach, and I think many economic development entity. So we're the economic development entity for Forsyth County, and our approach to that has been the term is economic gardening, but the idea is, and I mentioned a moment ago, the idea we operate more like a consulting firm. So in addition to the websites and that information, or getting that information, you can also sit down with our economic development team and discuss with them your overall business plan, and we use our resources. We spend a lot of money with Nielsen's data analytics, where we're able to provide you reports on things just like what is market demand. If you're looking at a particular piece of real estate in the community, we can tell you what those traffic numbers look like. We can tell you what the median income is of the traffic going by that site. So I would just encourage you, and most chambers, most economic development entities can provide that. The challenge that we all face is that most entrepreneurs don't call, or they don't call until Kit said it's too late, and so, because I actually talked about the mindset of an entrepreneur, unfortunately, the very thing that often drives an entrepreneur is the very thing that often causes them to make a terrible mistake, and that is, I see the goal and I'm going for that goal no matter what. And the no matter what can get, does drive a lot of failure, unfortunately. So
entrepreneurs, and I know you know this already, entrepreneurs should start their own board of directors before they even open business. Well, I'm one person by myself. So what? We call it a brain trust. Open your own board of directors first. They'll point you in the right direction. Go to your chamber, go to your city, go to your consulate. There's so much help out there that'll make sure you don't make that mistake, and you do know what's hot, and you do know what isn't hot in a specific area.
And there are other resources like the SBDC, for example. Again, our tax dollars are paying for that. They're a great resource for that kind of information, to be able to give you the data that you need to make a solid decision.
And James, not to put,
go ahead. Yeah, it was a great coincidence. Like last in Illinois, we started robotics, teaching to the kids from second grade to high school, and also chess. So both are it was really not that successful because it's a small city, and so there was not really big population. But then I started here last year. It was a huge demand. I mean, so right now. I'm a software developer in the background, so I do the machine learning and AI and face detection software where it will tell the name. So now we developed a software where in the drones, so it can fly and it can see the face of the person and it will say the name of the person. So that's something we are developing it. That is just for a hobby. But again, we are also teaching to the kids, to the from second grade to all the way to high school. Sure. And there are a lot of kids they are learning the Python coding and the machine learning. So you see the demand. Yeah, there is a big demand. I mean, it was just a passion, just coincidence to the demand. And I didn't really do all this research, but Nazira was a great connection. So I just talked with her, and then again I came to this meeting. But that was really, I mean, right now we are teaching about 120 kids, mostly, as you shared, the Asian kids, Indian kids, and very less Caucasians, and there are some Koreans and Chinese as well. And so that is coming, it's near Sharon Road. I mean, so that facility is good. I have 4 coaches right now. So it's just. I mean, mostly the entrepreneurs, the passion and the coincidence of the timing is kind of really getting really successful. That's what I kind of feel. But this information is really great. I mean,
you're reading the future, which is critical in business today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, building the future. Go ahead, Sabine.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sabina, and thank you, everybody. This was enlightening. I've been living in the international marketing and startup space for on and off about 20 years, and it's even hard for somebody who lives in that space to sometimes find the information. So I hear you when you say that there's people out there that don't have a clue who to call. And I'm always surprised, why wouldn't you Google? It doesn't everybody. But I'm curious to find out from you guys, is there something that's missing for you to get the word out, that you are there and you offer those
We try, believe me. We run billboards, we run newspaper ads. We do over 100 events a year. You don't have to be a member to come to any of our events. They're there. We try so hard to put the word out through everybody and through the faiths and the organizations. And some people just they're kind of embarrassed. Well, I'm going to go start a business. I don't know if it's really, or else they want to start a hobby. There's nothing worse than opening up a business as a hobby. Well, talk to you about the yoga lady. She's into my office crying literally because she says, I've opened up for 3 months now, nobody's walking in, I'm going broke. And I says, I came over there 3 times to talk to you and see how things are going. Your door was locked, your lights were off during business hours. Well, I only come in when I've got people scheduled. Well, then you're not in business, you're in a hobby. So there's so much knowledge to be gained by people who are in the know of, if you want to hop, do that at home. Do that at home if that's what you're going to do. Don't put a $3,000 a month lease signature out there. You know what I'm saying? So, but there is the help, and we try. I know he tries. I see all his emails every day from him.
So often, I think there's 2 pieces to that. This is my 19th year in doing chamber work, and I love every minute of it. I think I love it more now than when I started. And so you're hitting at something that is central to people who are in our business, not in associations as well. That's another thing. Your professional associations are phenomenal resources. And I think there's 2 pieces to it. One, every dollar that comes to our organization, we have to determine what is the absolute best use of that. Is that to tell people about what we're doing or to go do it? And so, for us, a lot of what I come from, the idea of Krispy Kreme donuts. They don't buy advertising; they just make a damn good donut. And so that's the idea. We're just going to invest it into the organization. The downside of that, of course, is particularly in a very vibrant community that we're all in. It is. The amount of resources that have to be spent to get people's attention on that kind of niche issue is tremendous. And so there's 2 pieces to that. There's a resource issue, but also a decision issue internally to say, for the resources that it demands, which way do you go? And it's a constant battle. It is a constant discussion, and a very healthy one. But you're absolutely right. That if I could point to one concern that I have that overrides others, it's just people knowing what we're doing and understanding what impact that can have on them, and that is a tremendous challenge.
Sometimes the solutions are so easy,
right?
Like a Krispy Kreme manager who came to us.
Yeah.
Did you know your kids are turning the hot lot off at night because they don't want to be too busy? Guess what? He doubled his business by turning the hot light on at night.
Right. That's perfect. That's a great story.
And if I could just add also, I think the 3 of us especially, I know we, Tech California, feel like we're making so much noise out in the market at all times with the constant social media postings about our upcoming events and, the e-newsletters that we're blasting out and the flyers and telling everybody in here and everybody in the community. So we feel like we're constantly getting the word out, but we, will frequently run into people that didn't know we existed, didn't know what we did, didn't know what our programs are. So sometimes there's such a difference between the perception of how much you're doing to get the word out and the fact that, what the reality is that people just are somehow missing it or aren't listening or are 2 heads down in their own work to really pay attention to what's available in the community around them. So it's a constant challenge.
Very nice. So we'll take one more question, quick one.
So good afternoon, everyone. Really is a very informative and very useful discussions. Greatly appreciate this panel. Actually, my name is Chandra. I have a consulting company for the mobile development in Alpharetta.
Switch on the mic, IP. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So we, I have a consulting company for that mobile development. Like we do that all the end to end. But sometimes the big challenge is identifying the right market, identifying the customer, and how to convert the customer into the sales. That is the bottom line of the business. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, we focus so many things, quality of the product of this multiple features, but sometimes we miss out that basic things, right? So that's where we need more help. So we have all other utilities, but sometimes we have a great challenge in getting a right data, then how to reach out the customer. That's where we need the mentors, right? So I know like you are all doing a great job. So do you have any specific program, how we can improve or how we can develop that, the sales cycle, right? So especially in that marketing side and
First of all,
sales side.
don't be naive. A lot of business owners are naive about their own business, their own self, their own employees. You know, and too many owners of businesses become managers. They become caught up in the thick of thin things. Every business, every entrepreneur needs to be a leader. You know, we've heard the word manager tossed around here many times. Every business needs a manager, but they got to have a leader. Somebody who gets everybody energized and excited, and someone who pays attention to them, understands employees are your biggest goal. You know, your product is important too, but your employees. The Krispy Kreme donut was great, but the kids were turning the light off. You know, you need someone who is a leader and who gets the right people in there, gets them doing the right things, but don't micromanage it. For heaven's sakes, I see so many businesses fail because of what we call the Masano effect. You know, they micromanage themselves to death. You've already hired the best people. You've already hired their best manager. Now get the heck out of the way and let them do it. You be the leader. You be the overseer. You be the motivator, the energizer. Look at this lady. Look what she motivates and starts because of her enthusiasm and stuff. You know, that's a leader. That's not a manager. You hire managers. You be the leader. You be the energizer. You be the overseer. Don't be naive about your business. That's one of the things Chambers do is we do secret shoppers. You know, and then we come back and tell the owner, your light's off at night. You know, we do simple things. We eat their cookie and say, oh, no, this is not good. We eat their food. Oh, like, I need a fire extinguisher. You know, if you're in a certain market, they like hot food. If you're in a certain market, they don't like hot food. You know, we're working with an Indian restaurant right now. It says 99% of our customers are Indian. How do we get, you know, blacks, whites, you know, how do we get Chinese in here? Okay, you vary your menu. Your stuff is, wow, very hot. You know, variety. You know, it's so easy. It's so easy to find solutions. They're almost instant. They're almost obvious, but you become blinded, or what we call, you know, you put blinders on. You develop a scotoma to it, as it's called.
Sure.
It's a real physiological effect. When you're in a business, when you're in it so much, you don't see those issues. You develop, you know, protective things called scotomas or blinders to that issue.
Sure.
We come in with a fresh set of eyes and we can tell you exactly what's going on.
Okay, so I'm going to let Henry answer very quickly, and then the final question from Anand, and then we're going to close
I
out.
guess I'm going to talk about domestic in terms of how you find clientele base. And I mean, so, since you're here, right, it makes sense to focus on Georgia and surrounding states. It will be least costly. And I know there was a International Telecom Week in June. It was held here every year, rotate among different cities and continents. So those are the events that are being actually listed on Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce website. And I'm sure some of the local websites look for those, really. I mean, you cannot go to every single networking functions. You just have to pick and choose. So that's on the domestic side. Now, I mean, you know, those networking functions, you probably run into rainmakers and networkers that can help you. Now, on the global side, I think this is something I would be remiss if I didn't say this. The U.S. Department of Commerce has an excellent Gold Key program. I've actually have clients that use it. You know, for less than $1,000, they'll give you a country report, whether it's Brazil or China or India, and all the macroeconomics and blah, 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 where you study it. And then maybe a trip together with them where you pay for your own ticket, and then they'll do matchmaking for you. And I actually have 2 clients that benefit. They have gone 2 years, a few years ago, and actually get some foreign sales. And by the way, export of goods and services outside of this country is just as risky as you doing a domestic sales. No riskier. You know, just based on statistics, less than 0.7% bad debts from global export sales.
Okay.
Can I
So is
add?
that some-
Those are available.
Is that something you can help, he can connect you with later?
Yeah,
Okay.
with the Metro, with Department of Commerce, Gold Key program, I mean,
Yeah.
the folks here, you have
Sure.
a lot of resources.
Go
I was
ahead,
going to
John.
say, I actually used it, and I may have alluded to it earlier. One of the advantages, you got to understand, sometime in the international market,
Yep.
I think as Henry is alluding to, is the fact that when you go into these markets, you're an unknown. And so what the commercial service does is, it basically tells the folks, you're a reputable company that you should do business with, because
Yeah.
you know there's a lot of fraud and a lot of funky stuff that goes on in some of these markets. So they don't know you from Timbuktu. So when you go with the commercial service, it actually gives you almost like a cover that says you're a reputable company. We're supporting them. We want you to work with them. And so for us, I've used them in India. I've used them in Brazil, maybe in Mexico. I also use the state of Georgia in some markets, but it helps you get, positioned in the market. But the other piece is you gotta, I have an engineering background also. You gotta take your engineer's hat off and sometimes put on your marketing hat or get the right people around you, become more customer driven versus technology. In other words, you take the technology, but you have to look at be more market driven. And so you have to try to turn your head a little bit and say, okay, what is the market need is, and how can I make my program successful in that market? And it's not always you have the best widget, is sometimes you have a market position that you can build on because your product is somewhat unique, but it fits better in this space. And that's where the marketing piece is. That's where you can really drive your business.
Anand, just one quick final question from Anand. Chandra, because of the interest of time, but
Thank you.
You'll be willing,
Sure.
we can meet with
Th-
them.
thank you
Hey,
s-
if you can just pass the mic.
Thank
And
you
then,
so much, the panel. Really appreciate. Nazira, it's a great service.
Thank
Please
you.
continue to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chandra. And Anand, if you have any particular panelist you want to ask the question to.
I think, first of all, thank you very much, Nazira. This is a great meeting and all the great minds sitting in front of us.
Is the mic on? Yes. Okay.
Okay. I'm Anand, and I came here for a purpose when I saw the, the
Topic.
topic itself, the startup of the business, startups, right, of the entrepreneurs, and I think great minds here, and great topic. There are a lot of things from an inspiration incubator standpoint too. I think I have good notes of what you all said, the good things and the advice that I can take home. The one thing that I'm totally into technology, and I think coming back or second on that same question, one of the biggest things what I'm facing right now is when we do RFPs, again in conjunction with working with Nazira and doing RFPs for the state and the city counties, I wanted to win at home first before I go and conquer the international business, right? So I think that's, Henry, you mentioned that, look at what states are. So me and Nazira working with 5 counties at least, and then just looking at that particular aspect. But at the same time, there's one thing that always bothers me from a startup standpoint is, how do you show references when you are a startup company and you have the expertise, you have the knowledge, you have the technology there we can put forth to. That one thing is bothers is how you actually do references, or what is your experience? How do you overcome that?
Professional experience.
Professional experience. How do you
Okay.
overcome that?
Yeah,
Sure, so Karen,
I'll be happy to answer that. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge as a startup. You don't have your first customer yet, right? If you have a pilot, and even an unpaid pilot or beta test going on, ask the company that you're doing that with if they'd be willing to provide a reference. Even without that, though, the best thing that you can do is make very clear what your experience and what the experience of if you have a co-founder or any other executives working with you, what your prior professional experience is. One of the things I always tell our startups to include on their pitch deck is, all the pertinent points. What was your prior titles, prior Fortune 1000 companies that you've worked for? Because that gives you instant credibility. They may not know much about you. You may not have a customer yet, but, oh, okay, well, he ran data analytics for Oracle. Check the box, right? So that can give you an equal amount of credibility with customers as well until you land that first customer.
Thank you,
Very
Gary.
nice. Thank you, Anand. So, Kent, we have 2 more minutes and 20 seconds each for your final comments to finish the session. And finally, I'm going to have a spot-on question for James that I'm not going to ask, that I'm putting him towards the end and the camera is on. So, James, you can sweat it out till we come to you. Go ahead. 20-second closing comments.
I would just encourage.
And if you can use your mic up, yeah.
I would just encourage you, every once again, I get really stuck on this manager word. You need to be a leader. Everybody keys off a leader. Nobody keys off a manager. Be a leader. Hire a manager. Let them run the business. Don't micromanage them to death. Otherwise, you control yourself right out of death. You be the leader. Hire a manager. Everybody keys off a leader. Leaders are also visionaries. It's very important to be a visionary. There's a difference between somebody who wishes and sets goals and dreams. Visionary is the ultimate. That's where the big boys and girls play. And you program it. People don't understand their own subconscious mind is a guided missile. It is physiological. What you put garbage in, you get garbage out. You put greatness in, you get greatness out. Not psychological. It's physiological. It literally works that way. Self-talk is important. Who you hang with is important. The books you read are important. Always believe. Believe, even if you don't believe. That your mind changes the trajectory of everything that happens in your life if you program it positively. It's just the way it works. So just remember those. It's so easy that it seems unreal to people, but it's the way your brain physiological works. Program it with positive stuff. Program it with your goal. Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20? It will literally make it happen without you even knowing it is.
Your enthusiasm
that's a
is
whole
so
week-long seminar.
Yes, I can see that your enthusiasm is so contagious. If they've not been setting up that entrepreneur, I'm sure they're going right out the door and they're saying, I'm going to start a business right away. So thank you for your enthusiasm, Ken, and the words of wisdom. Don, 20 seconds.
Yes, 20 seconds.
Yeah, switch on the mic. Yeah.
Yes, 20 seconds. Okay, I think as an entrepreneur, I think it's important to remember that it's a marathon. It's not a short term, it's not a dash. It's a marathon race, and so you have to be willing to deal with adversities, deal with the challenges, be positive, and take that positive energy and drive for success. You can be successful, but you're going to have to work. You're going to have to work many hours. You're going to have to be innovative. You're going to have to be smart about how you do business, but there's tremendous opportunities for you. So you take that positive energy and continue to be positive and drive for success. But remember that it's a marathon. It's not a short-term dash. It's a marathon race, and you have to every day you got to get up, you got to get out, you got to knock on the doors, you got to make the phone calls, you got to send the emails, you got to do all the things that you need to do.
You're talking as if someone's running for office.
Do I sound like a politician? And entrepreneurs
just teasing you.
But you really have to get out there and find those customers and find people that you can work with. But there's a world of opportunity out there, both domestically and globally, and I think if you have the right attitude, you can be very successful.
Thank you, Dawn, very much. Karen?
Yeah, and I would emphasize again the importance of finding mentors and advisors along this journey. You don't have to be a tech startup in an incubator to find mentors. There are programs that provide free mentors for business people, such as the SCORE program. I know they work with the Alpharetta Chamber and probably some other area chambers. That's an excellent national program of free, seasoned veteran mentors and advisors. Because, yes, I echo what the others have said up here. As entrepreneurs, we all think we can do it ourselves, and we see the goal, and we're just going to go headlong into it and not ask anybody for help. You've got to squelch that urge. You do want to ask for help, and you do want to get as much input and guidance along the way from people, experienced veterans along the way.
Thank you so much, Karen. Henry?
I guess I'm going to repeat a few comments. Actually, an entrepreneur really needs to be surrounded by an excellent team. He or she will basically help the team excel. That's how I look at this. The team is so important. The team might consist of mentors, networking professionals from all walks of life that can give you guidance, because your first few years is going to be very critical. You have limited resources, and even in terms of your clientele base selection, origination of and finding new clients, sometimes you just have to walk away. I mean, I can give you an example. We spent 2 years trying to cultivate and conclude a transaction, economic reason, we turn it down, move on. So these are, sometimes you have to say no. Even to capital funds, investors coming after your company, the valuation is too low, don't give yourself away.
Thank you, Henry. James, 20-second comments.
Just really, it's already been said, but I think it is just, this is true for anybody, but particularly entrepreneurs, because my general experience has been entrepreneurs do not want to ask for help. And that, in my view, is probably at least in my limited experience with it, the number one predictor of your success is how willing you are to ask for help of your friends, of your family, and particularly of folks like us who, that's all we do. That's all we exist to do, is to help people live out that dream.
Okay, so I actually met with the chairman of the Federal Indian Industry of Chamber of Commerce to the specific state that I went to, and he showed a very deep interest in collaborating with a county like yours or a city like Johns Creek. Is that something you want me to facilitate, since they're already committed and I've seen their business facility, and seems like they are interested in that collaboration? And
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's an impression from the outside looking in that those relationships happen at some grand scale, that there's governors talking to other governors and that sort of thing. The reality is it's individual business people who drive those relationships, and it's later the governors who generally respond to that. So yes, absolutely. We have long-standing relationships throughout Europe, particularly in Germany, increasingly in India, and that is, as Kent alluded to, it is a huge focus for us, and we absolutely
Awesome.
want that. It is a big part of our future strategy. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow night at our annual celebration a bit, but that is a big strategy for us economically.
Definitely, and help you facilitate that. So it's
Yes,
not
please.
just delegation and photo ops, but really actually something comes out of the goals developed.
That's it. I mean, it's all about the outcomes, and
Sure.
generally, listening to a friend of mine who's now a historian, and he said that the number one tool of peace is commerce.
Yeah.
And that is, if you think about it, is absolutely true. And so the more that we develop that, there's much grander things that happen as a result of those relationships, and we very
nice.
much welcome that.
So thank you so much, James, for that, and Karen for accepting to meet with the other counterpart back in India as well. So we want to thank you for your time, for being here, and of course the pizzas are still there, the hot chai is still being served, and I would like to thank my team member Anu for helping out organizing for today, and also Veni is another team member, she had to leave, and Prashant and his team who usually come and help photography and the videography because it's archived. And so thank you so much, Prashant and Trey, for being there for Chai and Chat for the last 2 years probably. Yeah, they've been there for every session, and it's all archived, so we'll give you the video link and the pictures from today. But we didn't give you get you a big memento, but definitely Anu is going to give you, Kent and all the panelists, a sort of a tote bag to represent Please Go Green, right? Let's use less plastic, and let's advocate for going green, starting with individual self. Yeah, so you can start using this as the grocery bag probably. Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate all of the panelists, and we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.